Hey everybody, Eric aka Core Geek here. So I just finished a couple prop builds for BlizzCon. One was for my friends over at Arms Armor and Awesome, which was a rocket launcher. The other one was for Miss Vert Vixen, which was a huge Nova space rival, which is like bigger than this baby. They both use 12-volt lighting setups, just like this Calhoun rifle that I built, based on LED strip lights. It's a pretty simple setup, and I got a lot of questions about how I did it. So I just decided to go back and make this video as a how-to, because I do have a video posted about this particular gun, but it just kind of shows off the lighting. It doesn't really tell you how to put it together. And this is going to be a specific how to put it together. It doesn't require a lot of skill. It doesn't require a ton of money. Hopefully it'll be something that you can utilize for your prop building and or armor building. Okay, so let's talk tools and supplies. What stuff are you going to need to be able to do this? Number one is you're going to need a soldering iron and some solder. This stuff isn't terribly expensive. It's about 10 bucks. You can buy this at Harbor Freight. It's maybe even less than 10 bucks. These aren't the best in the world, but they work for what we're doing. It's very simple soldering. I don't have forearms. Maybe you do. But if you don't, you want one of these little babies right here. This is a, I don't even know what they call it. Extra arms. Got little clippies here. You'll see how this comes in handy when you're soldering. You don't have to have it, but it definitely helps a whole lot. It's like 5 bucks at Harbor Freight. You can't really go wrong with that. So for supplies, the number one supply you're going to need is LED strip lighting. You can find this at Amazon. Most of these run about 5 bucks a reel. It kind of depends on who you buy them from, what color they are. For some reason, the colors cost more, different. So, but the cool thing about these is they're already all wired together and they already have capacitors in them. You don't have to worry about frying your LEDs with too much power. That's one of the things that makes this very simple. You're also going to need a power supply. Now, my Calhoun rifle runs on a large power supply, which is what I'm going to recommend you use. And I'm going to pull it out here since I had it in there earlier when I was goofing around with it. So this is XT power supply, also found at Amazon. It's actually like a gadget power supply, so you can use it to like charge your iPhone or charge your tablet. Or a little bit of investment, 50 bucks, but that 50 bucks gives you a great power supply. This rifle, it'll run a con all day long from this battery. So it's going to depend on how many lights you have on. You know, obviously the more lights, the more power drain you're going to have. But for the most setups, I think that this power supply is going to work really well. This one also can switch to 9 volt. Now, you can run this whole setup off a 9 volt. This whole rifle will run off a 9 volt battery. Now, I tested it compared to that power supply, and a 9 volt battery only lasts about an hour. Whereas the XT power supply will give me a full day at a con. Another option you have is one of these, and this is a power pack where you can jam 8 AA batteries together and it'll give you a 9 volt power pack. Now I haven't tested this on my Calhoun rifle, so I have no idea how much time this lasts, but this is an option, and these are like $3 on Amazon, but you still have to fill it with batteries, so you do have some costs in there. So you might be wondering where the soldering comes in if all the lights are already stripped together. Well, the thing is you have to kind of do the lighting in sections. This could have been lit here and I run the whole strip all the way down to here, but then you have all these lights in the middle, presumably buried inside there, all lit up and sucking energy, right? Well, the way to do this is you do it in sections. The scope here has a small piece in it. The inside middle here has a wrapped around piece in it. The ends here are just long strips. Each one of these groups, let's call those groups, are wired together with just standard type electrical wire like this. Okay, so just standard wire. This is wire from like an old power supply. Instead of throwing away, I just cut the wire and use that. There's a piece of wire between those two. So that's where the soldering comes in. One is between the LEDs strips, between each section, and also a little bit of wiring involved in where that plugs in. That's got to be soldered into there too. It's not a ton of soldering, and I'll show you a soldering. It's not nearly as hard as you think it is if you've never done it before. So with that basic setup, we're just going to do a power supply section and maybe 2 sections together, and then the rest of it you can go from there because it's really just adding sections. So I have a lot of questions about how I diffuse my stuff. I use matching color transparent acrylic and usually try to match it to the color of the light, because what happens is if you go outside, LEDs just get blown out in the sun. Unless you just have some huge amount of LEDs and some really major power source, your LEDs are just going to get blown out. When that gets blown out, you still see the right color in there. It's not glowing, but at least it's the correct color. For diffusion, I back with a piece of bond paper. Bond paper is a layout paper, has a little bit of translucency to it. It just captures the light just right. And I can show an example of that. That's what this one looks like without the plate on there, okay? And if this piece of acrylic wasn't covered with the paper, you'd still just see the LED straight through. But when we cover it back up, nice and glowy. Same thing up here. There's two reasons why this works. One is the light helps diffuse it. The other is there's a bit of an air gap. There's probably about a ½ inch between the surface of the lights and the surface of where the acrylic is. And that little bit of air gap helps create that illusion of diffusion even more. This technique, maybe not the best to use if you have to have your acrylic or whatever clear substance you're using right on top of the LEDs. There's other ways you can go about that. I'm not going to really go into that here because this is specifically this setup, but there are other options. So first off, we want to cut a couple sections of the LED strips. Now, if you look between the little contact points, you'll see a little line, and that's where you want to snip. I'm just going to cut a couple sample strips. It doesn't matter really the length. You can do them as much as you want. Those are the contact points, and what we have to do is clear off the silicone cover. These particular strips are waterproof, and so they have this silicone cover on them. Not all LED strips have this, so you may want to skip ahead if yours don't have the silicone cover. What I do is make a nice small cut, not all the way through though. You have to be careful not to cut through the white backing, which has circuitry behind it. And then I make another cut to where I get right on the top edge of that white area. Once you have that done, you can start peeling it off. It doesn't always come off perfectly in one strip, but you should be able to get it off pretty easily. This one came off in a couple sections, so just have to use the tip of the knife to kind of peel it back a little more. Once that's done, you just need to go and do the other ends, as many ends as you want to connect together. So now I have two strips with the contact points uncovered on both edges. And next we'll go to wiring the two together. Next you're going to want to set up a strip piece of electrical wire over the top of a contact point of the LED strip. Using your soldering iron and soldering wire, add a little bit of solder to the tip of the iron, then place that on the joint of the two pieces. While you're touching that, touch your soldering wire to the point, and that little contact point will grab onto that junction. Then readjust for your second wire. Make sure it's right over the top of the contact point and they're touching each other preferably, and repeat the same process. Add solder to your soldering iron first, touch that on the joint, and while those two are touched, push your soldering wire into the joint a little more, and that contact point will grab the solder. And that's it for soldering the wires to the LED strips. And you can check your joint, make sure those are connected well. Next up is attaching your second piece of LED strip to the wiring that you soldered to your first piece of LED strip. You need to pay special attention to the polarity, and you'll see a little plus sign of which wire connects to which. Make sure you solder plus to plus. If you don't, the wiring won't work because it's going to be cross polarity. Go ahead and set up your wire in your LED strip and solder just like we did earlier. We'll skip through the whole process here. Here we are with both ends connected with polarity matching, and next we'll move on to connecting the power source. So this is the part of the video where you get to look at a static picture and listen to me explain about this power plug. I mistakenly thought I was recording, but I wasn't. It's not that important though, as far as video goes. So this plug is actually part of an extender cable that comes with the XT power supply. You can trim it to whatever length you want, peel back the black casing, then you'll see the two wire leads. Strip off those wire leads, then what you're going to want to do is plug that into the power supply, push the button to turn the power supply on, and then touch either one of those leads onto the two power contacts on your first LED strip. They only go one way, so if the one way doesn't work, switch them, the lighting should light up. That way you know what the polarity is. Make note of which one goes where, then you can connect them via solder. And here we are with everything all connected. Once you have the power plug soldered into your LEDs there, then your lighting setup should be ready to go. You can plug it back into the battery, push the button, hopefully your lights will work. So far I've shown you how to connect strip to strip. You can also connect through a wire lead. So I'm going to clip these two in half, create another section with a lead, connect all three section leads together, and then solder those. This is a way that you can make long runs, similar to my Calhoun rifle, of different sections. All you need is just longer pieces of wire. I'm going to speed this up so you don't have to sit through all 7 minutes of me putting this together. The wires are only twisted together at this point because I'm going to check the battery first and make sure everything lights up the way it should before I commit to solder. Connecting wire leads is pretty similar to the spot soldering. Add a little bit of solder to the tip of your soldering iron, touch that to the leads you're going to solder together, wait for it to heat just a tad, then run your soldering wire across the leads. As you do, you'll see the solder filling in on the leads, and it'll be nice and shiny, and that's how you know you got a good connection. For the sake of brevity, I'm not going to demonstrate it, but one thing you do need to do is cover your wire connections, and that includes the connections on the ends of the LED strips as well. For the LED strips, you can just add a little bit of hot glue over the tops of those wires, and that'll cover those well. For the wired connections, the best thing to use is something called heat shrink. You can buy it at Harbor Freight or really any home improvement store usually. It looks like little straws, but what you do is cut a section, put that on the wire before you connect the wires together, slide it over the connection, and then heat it with a heat gun, and it makes a nice shrink wrap around that connection. For a final step, let's talk diffusion. You can see this clear piece of acrylic offers none whatsoever. If you hold the paper over the lights, you'll see that the diffusion is possible. I attached my paper to the acrylic with double-sided transparent tape. And what you do is just figure out the adjustment of how much diffusion you want by how far that piece is separated from the LEDs. I guess we got through that okay. I hope that it's informative to you. I hope that you learned a few things if you've never soldered before. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of a want to be able to try it. And like I said, it's not terribly difficult to do. This is a pretty easy setup. It's just a couple connections and you can have things light up. I hope that you found this useful, and if you give it a shot, let me know. If you have any questions, let me know. You can hit me in the comments here on YouTube, or you can go to my Facebook page. It's Core Geek Cosplay and Creations. Or you can also hit me up over on Instagram, which I've been using more lately, which is just Core Geek. Wow, if you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. Just thought you'd like to see a little bonus video of the Farah rocket launcher all lit up using this exact tutorial.